Good morning, Jason.
Hey, Jason, very good morning. We can't hear you on mute.
What's that character on your screen there, Shiv? I always wanted to ask.
It's just a robot. That's it.
Okay, I thought it was some game or something you built. Who knows, right?
Now, one of my pet projects, basically, which I was working on like a couple of years, and then I probably hope to work on it in a couple of years, is something just called a cookbot, which essentially is a robot which can actually cook. So a lot of this basically is like machines which are made, but my idea was basically something which had mechanical arms, which could do things like you have to flip, you have to stir, you have to do all of those pieces, right? So can you do that replacement rather than essentially just create a machine which does everything kind of, the taste does not come exactly as what you would do with humans, right? So
I'm game. Get me on the beta.
Yeah, count me in.
That's right. Look like an old man. To hell with vision. I got Chris there with the cool background and the matching sweatshirt. So yeah, I'm kind of not keeping up with the game today.
I think it might be a bit warmer where then where then you are there.
I got this new webcam, follows me everywhere I go. Now I got to get this green screen figured out.
Nice.
Stuff. I have a tendency to move a lot, so good idea.
I don't know if you've had a chance to see NVIDIA's latest technology in that in this space, where even if you're looking away from the camera, it basically modifies your image so that you're looking towards the camera. So
what?
Yep.
Yeah, that's even I heard that.
I heard that they can capture a whiteboard just by looking at it. But I didn't know anything about that. That's slick.
Yeah, you've got that within the Teams rooms. You can have the content camera on that, can't you?
Yeah. I'm looking for the camera that has a brighten teeth button and a pick your hairstyle button.
Zoom's already got that, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's a little cartoonish, but it works. Yeah. Yeah, tried it. Yeah, just had earmuffs. So I'm like, what's the point? Yeah.
So we'll just get started in a minute so that it gives everybody time to just come in. And I expect like quite a few people will not be able to join us because I think today is the Right of Boom that's happening in Dallas. So
Correct.
I'm at Right of Boom and I'm attending.
yeah, Aaron.
That's right.
I appreciate that.
Wait till the end of this meeting. You're going to be glad you attended. Somebody's sharing their screen.
Yeah, I'm just going to kind of quickly give a
okay,
update,
cool.
and then
Right.
basically I'll hand it off to you.
So Shiva, we can start now. It's 3 past the hour, so.
Yep. So what we have today is basically we have our expert Jason. So what we've been doing with Jason is kind of talking to him about what we're doing from a Connect Secure perspective in terms of priorities, etc., as we're doing with a lot of people. And in fact, I'll give you an example. Like last week, we had a very interesting meeting with Chris Blunt, who basically is there, and he essentially gave us a whole bunch of requirements that we need to be in line for in order to be relevant in the UK market, and we are working on that to essentially make the release of that this week. And so what we're going to do today is kind of get everybody up to speed in terms of what we're going to be doing from a cloud security perspective. And we've just asked Jason to kind of do this presentation so that we understand what is required from a cloud security perspective. And then basically we take that as requirements and blessed by all of you. And then we will essentially put a sprint to basically get those set of features out. So that's essentially the idea of today's presentation. But before I hand off the reins to Jason, a very quick update on certain things that have happened in the platform this week so that everybody is aware. I spoke about last week the default role settings. So when a new user, especially this happens in the case when you basically are using, say, Office 365 authentication or this, right now what happens is that when a new user basically logs into the platform, they basically are in a role which is called no role. So unless you come in and basically give them access, they don't get access to the role. Now this works for most of the larger MSPs, but certain small MSPs have said that I have 5 or 6 people, and basically by default, when the people come in, I want essentially them to have a role of a help desk or an IT admin. We do not allow the default admin roles to be assigned automatically, but you can assign any of the other like help desk or any of those roles basically to any user. So you can set up the default role. So if that user logs in, authenticates and logs in, then he will essentially get the view which is basically corresponding to that this thing. Okay. Second is that there have been a lot of requests in terms of people asking for, they install the agent. Unfortunately, they put in the wrong company ID, so it lands up in the wrong company. So they want to migrate this agent from the older company to the new company. So now we have a feature which is called agent migration. Earlier, we were doing this on request from support, and basically it was a little clumsy. Now you can migrate the agents yourself. So you can essentially move the agents from one company to the other company yourself. So you can basically choose which company you want to migrate to. And then they will be, once they're migrated, they will come online with the new company. And then all the data, etc., is basically migrated over to the new company. So the next one is, so here, the thing is that you will essentially see the audit where basically you can see that this particular agent migration was requested. And then what was the status of that this thing. The next one is that you can essentially download the zip file of all the reports that you scheduled. So that way, basically, just in case the email goes out and you don't basically get a copy of it, you can essentially grab that from the portal also. And then we basically have an ability, like we basically do a retry internally in case basically the job fails for whatever reason. But in case, for example, the template is wrong or something of that order, then you can essentially fix the template and then you can essentially do a retry. So this is the thing. And then the last one is that a lot of people asked us for one component in the custom reports, which was essentially for result remediations. That has also been added. So you can see all the remediations that have been resolved. And then we've moved the offline vulnerability scan jobs. So one of the things that we were seeing is that a lot of like these offline vulnerability scan jobs were basically populating in the main scan jobs, which was causing it or making it difficult for people to look at what is the actual agent scan job status. So we just moved that into a separate tab so that it basically reduces the clutter. And then basically in the asset report, we've basically added another tab to show all the printer assets because this was requested by a lot of you. So this is essentially what we've kind of done right now. And whatever you're seeing right now basically is basically being put out in builds in this week. So by the end of this week, all of these features will become live on the system. So with that, I will basically hand it off to Jason, who will basically take us through how we should be securing our cloud assets. Over to you, Jason.
Awesome. Let me try to get my fantabulous screen share going here. I cannot share my screen. If you could just flip it on for me there, Shiv, I'd appreciate it. All right.
Yep, you can see your screen, Jason.
Okay, great. So look, before we get started, I wanted to kind of give you some context on what we do and a little bit about who I am and what we do with with Connect Secure and CyberCNS. And I think, sometimes it's important to understand kind of that dialogue. So I own an MSSP that provides cybersecurity services to MSPs. We have about 200 MSP clients. And I have a really tight relationship with Shiva and Sri because, Connect Secure, CyberCNS is a core part of what we do. Every client has to have it. We use it, my SOC team uses it every day. And it's a core part of our security service delivery, and we plug other things into it. We're working with Blue Shift as a SOAR provider to have, some real tight integration with, Connect Secure. And I'll explain why that's important as we talk about the narrative of trying to secure your cloud. Now, Shiva kind of stole a little bit of my thunder, and that's okay. But, we'll get to the end of the discussion. I'll explain why all this is important. I think the important thing to recognize as we're looking at Connect Secure and CyberCNS is a number of development improvements that happen every month. This does not happen with other platforms, period. End of story. It just doesn't. And so, that's why we've kind of made that investment, and I think you guys have as well. Those of you that are kind of stepped away from Right of Boom to hear what's being said today, hopefully I'll add some value to it. This presentation is under the context of the ransomware and infections that we see. We do a lot of business email compromises for MSPs and their clients, and it almost universally starts within the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. And I'm going to talk about how to protect your environment, but I'm doing it from the context of the compromises that we see all the time. We had 2 yesterday, as a matter of fact. And a lot of times that comes from a lack of understanding of exactly what kind of security you can do in Microsoft 365 and Azure AD. Used to, you had to get an Azure P2 license to do anything. You don't have to do that now. And there's some additional security controls that make a lot of sense. When you roll a SOAR platform up to that and it ingests those logs and ingests logs from other security stack tools, and you have a SOC watching it, that's that next level, real tight visibility. And I'll explain where that connection happens at the end of the deal here. So when we talk about basics, the very basics of securing Microsoft 365, here's what I want to say to you. We see so many compromises that happen with MSPs that is completely avoidable. A lot of this stuff is NFR. A lot of this stuff is incredibly affordable. Please, work with an MSSP like us. If you can't do it or whatever it is you do, use your entire stack in your organization. It's hard to defend it when you don't and something happens. This isn't, FUD. I can give you example after example, but I'm just saying, use everything you have within your environment. Standardize on Connect Secure and CyberCNS with all your clients. Use it as a baseline for stacking other platforms or, remediating what you see. That remediation plan page is by far the biggest game changer that we've seen. We're strictly a security company, and that's by far the biggest game changer that we've seen. And even when we pick up live compromises, one of the first things we do is roll out, Connect Secure, CyberCNS, because it gives us a visibility that we need within the platform. And, we pretty quickly can identify what's going on. I'll give you some other examples today to look out for. So what do we see within MSPs, right? What's the biggest problem that us as owners of MSPs and MSSPs have with our techs? The number one problem is what? Culture. If I take away admin rights from a tech, you think I wrote the guy up and about to fire him, right? Chris is smiling because he knows exactly what I'm talking about, right? It just doesn't make any sense. And so, give me just a second, gentlemen. Hey man, I'm doing the CyberCNS presentation. I'll call you right back. Yeah. Sorry, that was a infection we're doing. That was kind of FBI guys, but we take that rights away, and what happens? The tech gets all fired up, gets in his feelings, and thinks, oh gosh, why did you do that, right? But this narrative that we see where a tech is domain admin, global admin, admin on his desktop, it's just there's no excuse for it. Shift run as, that's why it's there, right? We see it too many times. It's easy to fix, address the culture situation, and move on. And that's really what we see a lot of times is we see these techs, they work hard, their Office 365 account is the gateway to everything. And that's just incredibly hard to secure against. Microsoft recommends a maximum of how many global admin accounts? Anybody know the answer to that? All right. 5. That's their recommended max. That's even for enterprise organizations. So consider doing that. The vast majority of compromises we see start within the Office 365 ecosystem. And, we'll talk a little bit about kind of what's most targeted, right? So within the Microsoft 365, Azure AD, OneDrive, SharePoint, you get it. You get the idea. Within that ecosystem, 70%, now this came from an FBI report, but it's pretty close to what we see. 70% of cyber attacks target the Office products or connected simple auth tools. How many of us have a connection into Office 365 from a third-party tool that's simple auth? Meaning it's a username and a password, right? We don't have a unique password for that account. We don't have conditional access controls. And so that application becomes a liability for you. And that's where we see that happen. It's not often that we see the core Office 365 environment be compromised. What we see is a third-party app with basic conditional or basic access, essentially global admin in an application that's got very little security, very little control. You look at products like SIP, they handle that security correctly with multi-factor authentication and capabilities. You look at products like Tech ID Manager that completely replaces the need to do a lot of this crap, but they all have the right MFA controls. 50% of all ransomware attacks occur after working hours. You can look at my eyes and I can tell you that's the truth. I hadn't had any sleep in 2 days, and because it just hasn't stopped lately. 25% are on the weekends, and the BECs, the business email compromises, they could easily be avoided, no problem, with the hardening and conditional access that I'm going to talk about today. The number one rule, do not enable GA, global admin, for any employee or licensed account. It's simple, right? Create an unlicensed on Microsoft.com account, use that as your GA, get a couple of YubiKeys, and protect that account, and use that only when you have to, and have maybe a couple of those as backup. But that's the best way to prevent it, to help prevent any of this from happening. And it gets so painful to watch because it is, believe it or not, that simple. So, okay, how do I get back to where I was? Why is this not working? Give me just a second. All right, let's try this again. Now we'll go back to it. So, so we also talk about what we call legacy authentication clients, right? And when you log into Azure AD, you can go to logs, and there's a selection that says legacy authentication logs. And there's 10 or 12 of them. You can select them all at once. And what you're looking for, is kind of that legacy authentication, people who have authenticated without MFA, or applications that have legacy authentication. We want to clean that up. That's an easy pathway into compromise and one of the fastest ways to get in. Removing basic authentication apps where possible. I've already kind of beat that horse. I'm going to skip past that. They are a huge risk. And we all have tools that we really like that do something in the platform, but just have simple password authentication pass-through. Not a good idea. If you can avoid it, please avoid it, as much as possible. Now, if you have tenants that are created, and I'm really talking about your internal tenant, but if you have other tenants that are created after October 2019, you don't need an Azure P2 license. There is what's called a default security setting. That default security setting will take care of a number of these 26 or 27 security controls that I'm talking about today. The real problem lies in what I'm about to show you. The basics for hardening your cloud security, Microsoft 365 or Azure AD is enforce MFA. And what do I mean by MFA? Okay, some of you may not know, and that's okay. 2FA, talking about TOTP, that's simply a rotating code that's text to your phone or sent to your email. Okay, there's been a number of occasions where that's been compromised, not the actual TOTP token, but the threat actor already has, access to the machine. The user's running as an admin. He gets one of 400 emails, and these guys target these texts with very, very cleverly crafted emails, and they spend a lot of time looking to get access. What they do now, TrickBot, I can't remember the name of the other one, Caribbean or something, I can't remember. Anyway, those platforms look to gain full administrative access to your environment, full administrative access to your cloud security, your Azure AD, and then they sit there. Why do they do that? Do they exfiltrate data for ransom? No, these guys simply sell your access over and over and over again. When we talk about IOCs, indicators of compromise, or when we talk about dwell time, how long does a compromise run before it gets caught? The average is 48 days. Think about that. 48 days. Something that CyberCNS is going to be doing is going to help with that significantly, but we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. You use advanced tools like YubiKeys. They're inexpensive. They have the small ones that you can leave in a USB port if you don't want to jack with it. But a YubiKey versus a TOTP is an MFA, and it's much, much harder, to compromise. I would even say, because of the way it works, we haven't seen one compromised yet. It's a $40 device. You can get them in all different sizes that fit your narrative and use those, right? It's these days it's just easy to do, and it's critical. Again, don't assign GA to any employee. If you have a global admin that's anything other than an unlicensed on Microsoft.com account, please stop, don't pass go, don't collect $200, go do that. Got to get your employees off of there. It's way, way too risky these days. And unfortunately, we run into these, kind of ego situations where, again, people feel like, okay, well, people, goodness gracious, I'm sorry, guys. Okay. And, we run into these situations where people feel like they've been slighted in some way, or, and we don't want to lose our techs. They can get a job anywhere. So what do? We just kind of let it go, right? And, I've said kind of what's going on. Conditional access. So we're going to talk about how, CyberCNS and Nextcure, how they're going to help with that here in just a few minutes. But enabling conditional access, that's conditions and controls. The condition in this diagram that comes from Microsoft is employee and partner users and roles, and the controls are allow, block access. If you have techs, create a global admin or create an admin account for them that's separate from their account. It could be Fred at, I don't know, bloodsecurity.onmicrosoft.com or whatever, right? And he uses that account for admin, but it's not a global admin. It may be locked down to, resetting accounts, creating accounts, and changing passwords. There's a whole series of admin accounts that aren't necessary for that individual to have. There are experts that can help you design and architect that if you need to. Why, thank you, Siri. I didn't think I said hello. You know, there are people who are experts who can help you do that. You know, we have people on our team. If you don't feel like you can do it, but it's critical that you kind of get these conditional access controls in play. Trusted compliant devices, again, that's devices that are using USB keys or have some other type of, you know, some other type of MFA control. Geofencing and geo control, that's critically important. If you can use it, you know, if it makes sense to you as an organization to be able to use, you know, to be able to use those controls for one reason, you know, and that reason is that, you know, you've got, you know, you've got your devices are given access and control, and you've got your geofencing in place where if an employee's using a personal VPN or, you know, there's somebody who's got those credential controls, they may have a US IP, even though they're not in the United States, but it's pretty difficult for them to get an IP within your geo range, right? So simple things to do, simple things to control, critically important. You know, think about using hardened virtual machines when accessing your most critical environments. If you're using backup like Veeam, you know, or Datto or some of these other backup environments, it's incredibly important you secure those with conditional access and you use a tokenized, you know, or a non-tokenized access method, again, like, you know, like a YubiKey. Because what these guys do is they gain access to your environment and then they try to move laterally out to your backups so that they can control those or, you know, break those down so that you don't have access to those. And you'd be amazed how frequently that happens. It's not the vendor's fault, right? It is, they are, you know, they are passing the security through that you set up as the MSP owner or for the client. Blocking legacy authentication, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Again, you can look at your logs. You have legacy authentication enabled for devices. You know, an old Windows machine that you hadn't touched in 4 years. You know, that's what we mean by cleaning up those legacy access devices, pulling them out of the environment. The number one thing that's important for you as an MSP owner to do if you feel like there's a compromise, I want you to listen to me clearly, is understanding the process of kicking everybody out of Office 365. Changing a password does not do that, right? You have to be able to go in and force disconnect everybody, every device, you know, every app connection, and you can do that with a click of a button. And it's in Azure Security Controls. Just make sure you know where that is and you know how it works. Doesn't mean you're changing a password, doesn't mean you're doing anything other than forcing everybody out of the platform and having to re-authenticate. Well, I can't tell you how many times we work on a compromise and it's still going on, and the person that was in charge of that environment said, I changed everybody's password. That's irrelevant, right? You've got to kick everybody out. If you don't know how to do that, you can look that up. If you can't find it, you can ping, you know, me or Sri or Shiva, and we'll get you a screenshot on how to do that. But it's critically important that you do that. So that's, you know, understanding how, I mean, conditional controls can get incredibly deep. I highly recommend that you use a vendor to help you understand your conditional controls and your monitoring around conditional controls. And those kind of services that are additive to what you're doing, you know, cost, you know, $2, $3 a user. And it's, I mean, it's unbelievably worth it and valuable because you're getting the global view and you're getting enforcement capability instead of trying to do it in a nuanced fashion on your own, unless you live and breathe this stuff. I have guys that live and breathe this stuff. I don't understand how stuff comes out of their mouth. right? And I'm a security guy. I just don't get it, right? I know a DMARC and DKIM and SPF and MTS, ATA, or MTA, STS, that's about it. You know, this stuff gets incredibly complex. It's always good to have somebody get back over here. It's always good to have somebody do that. So that's the wrong one. Let me go back. So when we talk about, you know, the type, you know, of alerts that you would see within the environment, you've got brute force alerts that could come from, you know, your conditional access monitoring. You've got repeat attack login sources, people continually trying to log into the environment and making sure that you have the proper controls for that. Repeat attacks against your gateway, your gateway firewall. So listen to me here on this part too. If you're using a third-party email security platform, there's a fundamental difference in security of those platforms, whether you're using a gateway-based environment or you're using an API-based environment, okay? A gateway-based environment like the name escapes me, but you know, you've got you know, Mail Protector, you've got you know, well, there's a bunch of big ones out there. I've been up all night, sorry. But those gateway-based environments take over the mail flow, but they don't take over the security of the environment and how those are connected. You know, it's important to, again, within that product, enforce your geo control. If you have DLP capability, then you can use DLP. I highly recommend products like Checkpoint with Avanan, where it can protect beyond your standard product. It can protect, you know, OneDrive and ShareFile and, you know, and Teams and additional things like Dropbox, ShareFile, OneDrive. But if you have those and you're using them in a gateway control, make sure that the authentication method that that gateway is using, you know, is configured correctly. And if you don't know how to do that, it's not your expertise. Again, find somebody who can help you squeeze, you know, kind of squeeze that lemon, because it becomes more and more important, you know, more and more important as we, you know, start getting into, you know, some of these conditional access controls. So let me go back because that button's in the wrong place. And so, you know, it's, the other question is, you know, what else can I do? Like this, we're already too complex. I'm not even listening anymore. You know, some of you guys have been up all night at the conference. What else can I do? Well, password policy, simple, right? Set a password enforcement policy. Make sure that that password enforcement policy. Now, there's two recommendations. Has anybody read the FBI's password change policy recommendation that came out last year? What they said was, look, create a complex passwords, you know, 18 to 24 characters, complex. And unless there is an indicator of compromise for that password, don't ever change it. Unless there is a reason, unless there is an issue, a concern, don't change it. The other recommendations are, you know, rotate your passwords every 60 days and can't keep two passwords from before. Well, that's okay with a password policy, but what do people do? They just, you know, my password sucks 01, my password sucks 06, right? Or whatever they do. So make sure that in your password policy, you can't use those iterative passwords because they're easy to guess and they're easy to get in. When we do pen tests and we use products to scrape credentials out of Active Directory, you know, it's just, you just sit there and shake your head because you got that one guy that's got, you know, a 16-character complex password with phrases and dashes, and but everybody else has got, you know, their kid's name 06 or 2023 or whatever. And it's so easy to guess, right? We get in domain admin accounts all the time with simple, you know, simple password hashing. So again, this stuff's simple, right? Look for tools to help you with administration. Look for tools to help you understand visibly what's happening and functionally what's happening. It's not just, hey, I have a problem. Somebody creates a mail forwarding rule. The platform says, nah, kicks it and prevents it from happening and sends you an alert. There's so many controls going on, you're going to need to do Custom developed app access. Everybody has and that's not a GA as an admin, they can allow an application that's been custom written that does not have the proper certificates, that doesn't have the proper validation, that hasn't been through a threat hunting sandbox or a SHA-1 that's been checked more than once. That is what we talk about custom developer access. And if this person's an admin, they can say, yeah, sure, come on in. Right? That kind of stuff is, again, dangerous. When we look at the major compromise that have happened, Home Depot, what happened? It wasn't Home Depot. It was the guys that ran their air conditioners. Right? I mean, it's that kind of stuff that you guys got to really look out for your clients. Why do I say use a SOAR? First of all, let me talk about what a SOAR is. Right? A SOAR is means security, orchestration, automation, and response. You know what a SIM is? A SIM says, Chris, you got a problem, buddy. You better fix it. A SOAR says, Chris, you had a problem. I did the blocking and tackling, pulled him into the honeypot, but you need to go do something. Okay, that's the difference. Now, a SOAR, a good one, has a full SOC of security people that deal with that compromise. But the only way that you can do that effectively is to have tight integration. Now, what ConnectSecure CyberCNS did that very few other people do is everything that they do is based on their API. The platform that sits on top of their API is just, again, a dashboard that sits on top of the API. Everything is written and based within their API. And so that makes it so much easier to extract, critical data into a SOAR and have that SOAR make that decision. If you can use a SOAR platform where you have integration from your MDR, integration from your MFA, integration from your agents on your devices, packet level integration, and you've got all of that data that comes into a SOAR, it's not that expensive. It's been commoditized almost at this point. And if you want to know what a real good one is, reach out to me, I'll tell you, or the one that we use, or, you can find one yourself. But at the end of the day, you've got to have a good SOC. It needs to be a US based SOC, predominantly, and that has to do with regulations. But that SOC then can take those log pieces, those log components, and they can aggregate them and create a storyline, right? It's not as much about what happens when you're compromised, right? Aaron, Jerry, Chris, it's not about what happens when you're compromised. It's about how much forensics data can I pull out of that platform in half an hour and shut them down. Additionally, how much data can I pull out of that platform forensically to prove what happened and to give you a clean bill of health? That's also critical, right? If you have the right amount of data, we can do that in an incredibly short amount of time. Now, I'm going to talk here in a second about what ConnectSecure and CyberCNS is going to do to make this a lot easier. So we talk about more nuanced settings. Maybe some of your guys are pros and you're looking at me like, oh, come on, dude, give me something. All right, more nuanced settings. We're talking about user consent to app additions, setting those application additions into your cloud security, setting that to what we call low impact setting. That simply means that platform is evaluated on the access controls that it needs within your cloud security platform. And if it's low impact, meaning it needs very little access or it's extrapolating user data or whatever, then it'll allow it through. If it fails the low impact analysis, then you have to do more investigation. The external collaboration settings, bringing other people into the environment, right? If I want to bring, it's like, okay, cool, I'm going to bring Sri into our environment and set him up in teams so we can collaborate and work together, but the default, guess what? The default is admin. Got to be careful with bringing those third parties in, and you want to make sure that those external collab settings can only be invited by a GA or an admin, and that person's given only the specific requirements that they need. Always brand your login page. Is your, Chris, did you brand your login page? There you go. That's right. I figured much. Login page got to be branded. Why? Because then people know they're in the right place. If they don't see that big fat logo of yours and the services you provide, then they're in the wrong page. And that's super easy and critically important, right? Enable your portal timeouts and your idle session timeouts. Those are not there by default, right? You want to enable those. You want to get those cookies out of the browser, and you want to make sure that there's fresh authentication each time. Again, kind of a critical component, to the platform. So oftentimes we hear, I need help. This is too much. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. What are we going to do? Is this FUD, fear, fear, uncertainty, and doubt? Are you just scaring me? Unfortunately, I'm not. I'm happy to, to chat with you. We just added a guy to our team that started out the Navy cryptography. In 20 years, he's been working with like the Department of Energy and some of these other large government organizations in their SOC. And some of the stuff that he's seen recently, has trumped the stuff that I do all day long. And it's just, it's incredibly prevalent when Russia and Ukraine did their thing. And, that allowed these threat agents to do what they wanted. They don't have to hide anymore. It's wide open. We devalued the ruble. Putin said, go get them, boys. Okay. And that's what we're dealing with. If you don't know how to do this, if you don't have a SOC that can create this blocking and tackling and monitoring and alerting, we're creating a really tight partnership with Blue Shift and with Connect Secure. Blue Shift, is targeted to protect the gateway, not protect it because it's protected already, but to provide additional visibility data on the interface of the servers for Connect Secure and CyberCNS. That's underway right now. And, they're incredible partners. Well, we have a custom version of theirs. But again, that's a really good platform for integration. And their SOC does their job. They'll say, hey, look, Chris, you guys use LogMeIn, but I'm seeing, some other remote control tool on, Tanya's desktop. Do you know that's on there? The answer is usually no, right? So you go try to figure out what's going on, and she's on a Microsoft help call, with a remote access to her machine because some bamboozle. So there's all kind of alerts and blocking, tackling, honeypots, and it's just incredibly important. I'll leave you with a story, a case that we did recently, and why this is critical. We got a case from a water treatment plant. That water treatment plant had a compromise going on. They had their DVR, or their camera system, that had bridged the VLANs between business and their PLC environment. Big no-no, but they wanted to see the cameras when they're in their business, their PLC network, and they just said, okay, that's fine, we'll do it. The threat actor had taken compromise of the DVR. They also were navigating through some old iDRACs that hadn't been patched in 5 years or whatever, but they were using IPv6, right? And Windows machines, DHCP, defaults to IPv6 first. So they had created a DHCP IPv6 environment, and they were using NetBT to navigate around. And the tools that we had to analyze, protect, and define what was going on didn't see that traffic again because it was operating in IPv6 and it was invisible to the applications. And man, we called in our forensics guys. We just couldn't figure out what's going on. So we called in Blue Shift. We brought in one of their analysis nodes, which is a packet sensor. And we had a storyline within a couple of hours of what was going on. We look at the threat actors, Telegram groups. We're members of a few where we just kind of hang out and see what they're saying. These guys are attacking firmware-based environments, and they're using legal, legitimate tools to provide remote access or to navigate so you don't see them because, again, they're legitimate. You've got to have a SOC that looks at that and knows that that's anomalous activity to what's happening day to day. And so, we talk about data that's coming in. Excessive data might be worse than any lack of data. When you just boatload everything into a log server and you don't have the right SOC, you run into problems with analyzing that data and making a decision, and then we get an analysis paralysis. All right. So let me talk a little bit about kind of what is going on with connection. What's going on, with Connect Secure and Connect Secure and CyberCNS and the environment. I'm going to hand it to Shiva to explain in just a second because I didn't do it. But these guys are going to be, releasing an add-on that covers everything I just talked about. The monitoring, the configuration, the alerting, all of that. And that's going to be a real game changer for a lot of you because, again, if there's something to fix, it goes in the remediation plan, right? I'm going to give it to Shiva. If I could just give you a word of advice, live in that remediation plan page. When your techs aren't working tickets, live in that page. It will save you an incredible amount of heartache. I appreciate everybody taking the time to listen to me today. I hope I added some value and gave you some things to think about and maybe some things you're doing. I'm going to give it to Shiva to explain what he's putting together. And I just thank you everybody for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. That was really useful. Appreciate everything that you do for us. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Jason. And just as Jason said, the module that we're working on right now, which essentially is expected to be released in the first week of April, is a complete module which basically covers everything that Jason talked about in terms of securing the cloud and basically putting together a remediation plan so that you can essentially kind of in a single click be able to remediate those issues. Again, that's an opt-in thing. If you want to essentially opt in for that remediations, then just as we do with patch management, you'll be able to kind of auto fix those issues, because a lot of these issues, essentially, we see that they're simple issues to fix and we can basically use APIs to fix them, but a lot of people are not fixing these issues. So we are basically just going to go through the remediation plan and see if we can also introduce what is called, just as we've done with auto patch, we'll essentially do an auto fix of the cloud infrastructure, because I think eventually what's going to happen is that the cost of getting people to do things is essentially going to become higher and higher. And I can relate to one of the incidents that's happened today. One of our customers basically kind of came back to us today saying that I installed CyberCNS, but basically my client was attacked and basically you guys didn't figure it out. And then when we pulled the data out, we had the remediation plan, which was ready almost like 2 months ago, but it was not acted upon. So essentially we are looking at models by which we can essentially kind of make these things more actionable and make it more easier for everyone to basically do things and automate all of these pieces so that you can essentially kind of spend more time talking to the customers and basically than doing all these mundane tasks of like changing settings and doing all of these pieces, which essentially at the end of the day, it's the conversations that will make you money. It's not basically these 1 or 2 settings that's going to make you the bigger money. But if you don't make these settings, then you stand to lose the business that you have from the customer. So that's essentially kind of what we are working on. So we'll basically set out a preview probably towards the 3rd week of March. We'll get feedback as we've done with the PII and other pieces, and then we will essentially release this entire feature. So thank you everyone for coming to this call, and Jason, a special thank you to you for sharing this content with us and basically kind of helping us narrow down what should be the requirements and get everything. And to everyone else, in case you essentially think we have to add something above and beyond what Jason has told us, please do send in a request and we will basically take care of it. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.